now. And similarly here, this is the we Tamilians have to be very proud of this particular object. This is called as Damascus sword. Damascus is a name of a place in the country called Syria. And the speciality of this sword is it is made of a very specific and a very special material called Woods steel. The word Woods is an anglicized version of the Tamil word Urukku. Urukku is a Tamil word which gets corrupted in Kannada and Telugu as Ukku, and that Ukku becomes ultimately Woods in English. The beauty of this Urukku is actually the name of the process in which this steel was made. It involved the process of melting, and in Tamil, as we all know, the word for melting is Uruhardu or Urukku. So through this process, they were making what is called a very special steel, which was very light in weight, but had a very, very robust mechanical property, ideal for making swords by which you can win wars. So this was with high demand in the world. And in this picture, it's kind of exaggeration, but this is there. This is, of course, an artist's imagination, but the original of it, I'm told, the artist who made it originally is hanging in the Steel Authority of India Limited office in Ranchi. A branch of it is there in Salem also. What you see here is Alexander wearing the golden dress, and then you have King Puru, who is the black dress, and he is gifting something to Alexander. And behind, and what he's gifting that Damascus sword. And behind him, there is a helper who is carrying a box which looks like a golden box. And history records that inside this golden box, what was kept was a brick of that steel. Imagine Puru gifting to another king a brick of steel kept in a golden box. Compare that to today's time, when even if we buy a small nose stud of 0.5 gram gold, we immediately go to the bank locker made of iron to keep that gold safe. Compare that time to this time, how we have changed. So this has been the metallurgical heritage, particularly with respect to processing iron, because you need to understand that basically steel is an alloy of iron and carbon. If the carbon content is, say, less than 2.3%, then this is called a pig iron. And if the percentage of carbon is more than 2.8 or 2.9, that is called a wrought iron. So there's a very tiny window of 0.4 to 0.5% of carbon that can be added to the steel, that can be added to the iron in order to make this steel. So imagine the kind of engineering optimization that would have gone to make the steel back at least 2000 years back. Another metal for which we have to be extremely proud, I'm just fast forwarding to zinc. Again, as Tamilians, and with your lecture on linguistics yesterday, again linguistics comes into picture here. Today in the society, what is the word for zinc in Tamil? Although
Tuttanagam.
The answer is also there in the slide. It is Tuttanagam. Very interestingly, the word Tuttanagam for zinc in Tamil has got directly absorbed in Chinese as Tutanag. Chinese refer it to as Tutanag, and it is this Tuttanagam, or what is Tutta in Sanskrit, has become the base word for zinc in the language Portuguese and Chinese and Italian as well. Because it is only these variations that we get to see. Tutia in Persian and Arabic and Turkish. Tuti, Tuzia in Italian. Tusia, Tutia. So you can see the cognate of the same word tutta or tuttanagam is what is found. Here, I would like to draw your attention to the linguistic nuance, especially in Tamil. There is another metal for which the word nagam is used. Can some of you tell what is a metal for which we use the word nagam? So look at the beauty of the Tamil language, which captures the reality more accurately by calling it as Tutta Nagam and not just Tutta as in Sanskrit. Okay. And one more term for zinc in Sanskrit is actually Yashada. The reason for Yashada is it comes from the root that it is also very bright. Yasham dadati iti Yashada. So why? Because when you are smelting zinc, it appears very bright like silver. So people can mistake silver for zinc. So then that Yashada becomes Jashada, but that I will not bother you with. But why I'm harping on this is when we today look at the past science or technology, we look at them through texts. And language becomes a major either barrier or a major helper. And we have to keep all these variations in mind today. Because in today, even though Tuttanagam is zinc in Tamil, Tuttanag or Tutta in Sanskrit itself has become copper sulfate. Copper sulfate in Tamil today is Mail Tuttam. But the word Tutta in today, if you look at any of the books in Sanskrit or Hindi, it means only copper sulfate, and nobody will accept Tutta as zinc today. Why I can say this is when one of my paper went to a review, the reviewer immediately rejected the paper, saying that being a professor of chemistry, I do not even know that Tutta means copper sulfate and Tutta is not zinc. So how can this paper be accepted? So I had to sit down and write a detailed rebuttal showing all the documentary evidences, saying Tutta actually means zinc. So that is the level of difficulty or awareness that we have today about our own past.
So Drutadrava is another name for zinc, no sir, because we have to, while extracting it, so the temperature is very low, so we have to
What is the term that you said? Once again,
Drutadrava.
This is, I must say, this is the first time I'm hearing this term. I have not come across this in Amarakosha, nor I have come across this in
Sir,
the
actually,
Rasashastra text.
When we extract zinc, after the melting, we have to immediately take it out. If not, again it will. So
I'll come to that slide a little bit later. What you say is right, but then the process is slightly different. But this term Drutadravam may be a new term coined by somebody because becoming liquid is fast, because Dravam is made mostly fluid. I have not come across this term. I'll have to really, you have to help me out saying where, in which text it is appearing.
I'll try to get it, sir. It is in some ancient text only, sir. I'll get it.
I'll be happy to see, because texts that I have looked into does not use this term. There are terms like Kharpara or Jashada, Yashada, Jasta, etc., but not Drutadrava. Okay. Or we may not know. Who knows? Drutadravam may Apabhramsha become Tutham. So we do not know. We have to keep that possibility also in mind.
Tutta appears to be an Apabhramsha.
So Druta, Tutta, Druta Drava, that become Tutta, that we do not know. We have to wait and see, because Prakrit and most of the Indian languages, including Tamil, have got lot of influence of Prakrit. Where the Samyuktakshara, the thing becomes different here. That's why Amrita becomes Amudam. That Mr, that Samyuktakshara sound is dropped. So that possibility could also be there. We'll have to explore that. Thanks for pointing it out. Now, zinc, why is very important is because copper with zinc will give you brass, what is referred to in Tamil as Pittalai. The copper with zinc as a brass is a very old alloy that has been used as back as in, say, this Charaka Samhita also, but I'll come back to that a little bit later. I was a little carried away. Brass I will come a bit later. I'm still talking about zinc now. So this is the method as described in Rasaratna Samuchaya. one of the Rasashastra texts whose date is debatable anyway from 800 to 1200 CE. We will not get into that. But here what is described is, as ma'am also pointed out, the properties of zinc are very different compared to other metals. Point is, if there's an open furnace in which you are heating zinc ore, the zinc, once it gets converted, it has got the tendency to become vapor very quickly. It is called sublime. It gets not sublimated actually. It forms a liquid and immediately it gets converted to vapor before even you collect the liquid. So what you have to do, you have to devise a very indigenous method, which is in thermodynamics, we call it as a closed system, where you fill the zinc ore and the required reducing agent. See, what happens is the zinc carbonate that you see here is the zinc ore, which is a kharpara. So, musham mushopari nyasya kharparam pradhamettattah. So, this kharpara is your zinc carbonate. Musham musha upari. So, you keep the pot, one pot at the bottom, and then the other pot on the top in which you fill this kharparam, which is your zinc carbonate. By the way, kharparam is also what that appears in Siddha literature also. So in Siddha also they make, when they want to make tutta parpam, or they usually make one more thing, they make tutta parpam and tutta chenduram they make. For tutta chenduram, they use the word kharparam for the raw material. Now that is getting converted, ultimately you need to reduce the zinc oxide. Zinc carbonate, it is decarbonized first. You get zinc oxide. That zinc oxide has to be reduced. So again, you need the presence of carbon. So that has to be ultimately a reduction process. So this source of carbon is some again herbaceous material that you fill it on the top pot, and then you give the heat from the top layer, not from the bottom. So this is a very indigenously designed experimental technique, and without scientific temper, such a kind of thing would not have been would not have been possible at all. Okay. This is what I want you to appreciate. I will skip that. And the dating of zinc has been always a problematic issue because world did not discover zinc. Europe came to know about zinc only in 17th century. When did Indians come to know? If you go by Rasaratna Samuchaya, it is at least 800 to 1200 CE. But if you look at the Chinese literature, especially this Sui Shu or the Book of Sui, which was written during Sui dynasty, which is the 6th century, they acknowledge India for teaching them the art of distilling zinc, which they call it white copper. Okay. So when Chinese are able to acknowledge us, and so in fact, I don't have it in this slide, there is even Persians are acknowledging the Indians about the antiquity of zinc, but our own textbooks do not talk about it. Anyway, I will move further. About copper, these are all the different places in which copper has been, archaeological artifacts have been discovered. And this is a famous standing Buddha statue excavated from a place in Bihar called Sultanganj, roughly in 1850. Currently, it is in Birmingham, kept in their museum. But interestingly, about the concept of brass, copper is important, but copper and zinc will give you brass. With respect to brass, a very good technological question is, there are two types of brasses. One is accidental brass and one is intentional brass. What is accidental brass? When you are processing copper, there may be accidentally some ores of zinc also. So both of them will get simultaneously processed without your intention. And then what? Instead of getting copper, you will be getting brass. That is called accidental brass. But then because of the atomic size, or the grain size of these copper and zinc, there is a particular limit of 14% of zinc in the total brass for accidental brass. That is, in brass, you cannot have more than 14% of zinc. But there are archaeological excavations in India where people have found 30%, 40% of zinc in brass. Such a kind of brass is called a intentional brass. That is, you have copper metal, pure copper metal, you have pure zinc, and you intentionally mix them to get the alloy. Now there is a very famous question then, who first made intentional brass? That's question. I mean, again, I'll not get into the linguistic aspect of brass because I see that I am running short of time. The linguistic aspect of brass is also very important. Vanda Morton, very recently, 5 years back, she asked the question, who first made intentionally brass and where? Then very interestingly, she concludes in this paper that it was in India that intentional brass was made, and for the very first time. Okay, those of you interested, I can share this presentation with the organizers. You can have a look at those references also. There are lots of references on brass in our ancient literature, texts. I'll not bother you with the details, but of course, very close to Trichy, Swamimalai, the bronze. But what as a homework I can give you is the Tamil name for the method by which these bronze artifacts are made. In English, it is called as lost wax method, and it's a French word. Every textbook will carry that French word. Many of our own archaeologists and historians have used that French word everywhere. It is called cierre perdu, which is a very difficult to pronounce. But then we never use the Indian word for it. I do not know why. The same method has sustained ever since the Harappa dancing girls' time till the famous Choya bronzes that come out from Swamimalai even now. So as a homework, you try to find out the name of this method as evidenced in Tamil literatures. I will skip this, but this should never give you an impression that our ancient Indians knew what is technically called as a phase diagram. In science or in metallurgy and chemistry, what we know is that this such kind of figure that you see in front of you is called a phase diagram. That is, if I want to mix copper and zinc, I know that if I want, say, 40% of copper and 60% of zinc, I must be in this region. I must heat it up at least till 400 degrees Celsius. If I go to 600 degrees Celsius, it will be a different kind of a brass. So today we know through these phase diagrams very precisely how to control them. But back then they made brass, but how did they make brass? We do not know. All that we know is they made brass. And again, we have the certification by a foreigner, Paul Craddock, who is still alive and was even awarded the Padma Shri, that he told, this is a paper way back in 1983, that India were the first ones to make zinc because it's the earliest dated zinc mine in the world and earliest known zinc center for producing zinc in the industrial scale. How much? Tens of thousands of tons of zinc. So, textual example, I'll skip it because this is to do with, now this is where the text of Rasaranava comes, the style of mentioning it. But what I want to draw your attention to this is this line. If you see here, there are, those of you can read the Devanagari. It is written, Makshiko Vividastatra Pita Shukla Vibhagataha Vimalas Trividho Devi Shukla Pitascha Lohitaha. So Makshika, Vimala, and Chapala are kind of three different ores of copper. Okay. Now, Professor A.K. Vishwas, again from IIT Kanpur, when he looks at this, I have taken this from his paper, and I would like you to read the sentence. The procedures were described for making metal from Makshika, Vimala, and Sasyaka. The first two being pyrites of copper, and the third being copper sulfate. And the wonderful observation was made that all the three red products after processing seemed to be identical, that is tamra or copper, which is we call chembu. So this observation made centuries before the discovery of elements and Daltonian chemistry cannot be belittled. Okay, so you should understand what he's trying to drive at, hinting at the pre thought or the progenesis of this